This is Changeling the podcast.
Welcome to Changeling the podcast. Come for the glamour, stay for the vibes. I'm your host Josh, and with us is your other host Puka. Say hi, Puka.
Greetings.
What are we talking about tonight, Puka?
We're going back to the hallowed days of the, mid to late aughties, and to the days of the internet and internet forums, and the hallowed space of shadow and essence. Joining us is Dr. Chris Bern.
Hey guys.
Hello.
You're going to have to remind me, what was your handle on Shadow and Essence again? It was Swordsman, right?
Swordsman.
Oh, right. I remember.
Yeah.
And I was Zen10. Puka, I bet you were very different as your...
Well, so here's the true story, is that before I was Puka, I was on the old White Wolf forums under Alec Ravager, because that was my first character that I played on there, and that was what I transitioned over to Shadow and Essence using. Mm-hmm. So that was my moniker over there.
Yep, and I actually remember that.
Aww.
So we have some listener feedback. Normally do it at the end, but I feel like we should do it now. Two of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
One is Chig says, Swordsman, tell him I said happy belated birthday 9/9.
Nice. He actually remembers that. That's cool. Gosh, I haven't talked to any of the people from the forum in so long.
And Jagash says hi.
Awesome.
Yeah. He actually lives in my city, and we sometimes hang out.
Oh, very cool.
Yep.
Memories.
Yeah, it's definitely taking me back quite a bit, in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we should talk a little bit about what Shadow and Essence actually was, because I think there are some folks who have never even heard of it, probably.
I assume most haven't of our listeners.
I don't know. I think we mention it frequently enough that people have probably gleaned a bit. But
yeah, you've mentioned it a few times on the podcast.
So you might be able to speak to this better than I or, well, Josh, maybe you can, but how did it start? How did you get involved?
Well, it was actually started, like you said, back in the old forum days. I think it was the early aughts, and started as an alternate to the White Wolf forums, but a lot more vibrant, interactive, and they structured it so they had a separate group for each of the basic splats. So vampire, werewolf, mage, changeling, wraith. They added a few of the others. And so you could go between all the different groups depending on what your interest was. And within each, I mean, there was some great topics and discussions and so much creativity, especially in the Changeling one. I mean, Changeling the Dreaming's my top game, but I'm pretty well versed in all of them, especially Vampire and Werewolf. I've played quite a bit too. So I would venture into those other ones, and I don't know if it's just my preference and bias, but I've got to say that the Changeling members were just awesome. The forums were so active, and just, like I said, so much creativity. It truly was glamour on the internet.
We definitely had the most glamour slushies of them.
Yes, absolutely.
There was a fair bit of activity on the mage side from what I recall as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's like Changeling one, we were all like the glamour slushies and the like glomping each other and like, I mean, you still discuss things and stuff. And then the mage one was, weird academic philosophy discussions like any mage group.
As you would expect from mage, yeah.
I suspect that part of it, too, is because when they unceremoniously shut down the old White Wolf forums after Time of Judgment, like, vampire fans got their game right away. The rest of us had to wait. So, like, to have some kind of space available to discuss, like, in the interim, that was really valuable, I think.
Yeah.
But also, like, the new stuff, especially, like, Vampire Requiem was closest to Masquerade of all of them. But, like, the other ones, not the same games. Not bad. Like, I actually really liked Forsaken and don't really like Apocalypse, so I'm not saying, like, it's all bad, but, like, they were so different that just because you were fans of one doesn't mean you're going to be fans of the other, so...
Oh, totally. I was that way with Lost, and it's funny, I was actually just this week listening to your episode on Changing the Lost, and it just did not hit me the same
Yep.
way dreaming did. It was like kind of like you guys alluded to, almost depressing, and you're dealing with, psychological trauma and survivors of that. And for me at least, just not what I wanted. I mean, Changeling can be very dark. You guys know that really, really
Yeah.
well.
Hmm.
And it's probably less hopeful because at some point you will forget. You can be undone.
Hmm.
But until then, burn bright, burn hard. And that's what I love
Yeah.
about the game. One of the
And
things.
like the depressing outcome is you're now a regular person.
Yeah.
Like it's not. I mean, worse things can happen to you in a changeling game, but that's like the default or the thing that you're afraid of is the forgetting, not.
Yeah.
Something that speaks to that maybe is the fact that the Changeling, the Dreaming forums on Shadow and Essence stayed active well past when Lost was released. Like nobody
Yeah.
abandoned Dreaming for Lost.
Hmm.
No, and one of the things I've always loved about role-playing games is just because the line ends, just because they stop making books, you don't have to stop playing.
Yep.
My two main favorite role-playing games are Changeling the Dreaming and 7th Sea. And
Hmm.
I've been playing those long after the books were no longer published because I have all of them. The imagination, creativity, the ability to come up with stories, that doesn't change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that actually fits into something about Shadow and Essence that really stood out is they tried to almost do something like Storyteller Vault. I mean, that didn't exist and the
Yeah.
legality was quite different, but like there was both Changeling and weirdly Demon were like the two big. I mean, there's some other stuff too, but that was like they had a lot of like fan books. And that's where that definitely had some hand in Kithbook Boggin, right? The
Oh, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. That was created through Shadow and Essence. Some of the people involved there were the ones who wrote it and published it. White Wolf had kind of like an open gaming license allowance online at that time. And so while no one could make money off of it like we can on Storyteller's Vault, we were still allowed to
Yep.
publish it. And I didn't have a hand in writing that book. But yeah, that was some S&E members.
Yep. And there was a bunch of other projects that people were working on. I don't know how many
Yeah.
turned into
There
anything,
was
but
a Fomorian book where we were actually looking at doing full-on Fomorians and make them playable characters. There was someone that was making what was called Free Skies, which think like airships
Oh,
and sailing ships in the
yeah.
dreaming. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on, and I still have every file that I did not delete anything, so I still have all of those things.
Could you potentially share that?
Well, I actually have, in a way. A couple of years ago, I realized there's a lot of this older Changeling stuff that is just nowhere to be found anymore, and I have them. So I actually put all of this stuff up on a WordPress site. I'm sure it doesn't get much
What?
traffic, and it's things that I pulled from other internet sites that probably don't exist anymore. You might find them on the Wayback Machine or something like that. But I basically tried to compile everything that I had downloaded from Shadow and Essence or other websites, as well as some of my own stuff that I've created for my own games. And I'll let you guys put a link in and I'll send you that. But it's theshepherdsfreehold.wordpress.com.
Putting it into my browser right now.
And I'm very respectful of artwork, so I actually went on DeviantArt, found a lot of people who had done Changeling artwork, used it for the website, but I asked their permission and I have credited it because I wanted these great artists to get recognition for it too.
So I have to say also, when I was doing Kithbook Yildu, that was on Shadow and Essence, and I mean it was nearly complete. That was the thing that actually. So I took a break from it in like 2007, 2008. Came back in around 2010 to try and wrap up some loose threads, but then eventually faded away again. And
Yeah.
then Andrew Goodman, who did the Roots of Legend book a few years ago on the Vault, he reached out to me and said, "Oh, I saw that you." He reached out to me on Shadow and Essence because he was also on there, and he had sent me a message that was like, "Oh, would you mind if I used some ideas from this?" Or like, I don't want to overlap. And I happened, because I would like periodically just say, I wonder if I remember my login, like long after people had stopped posting.
Yeah.
And I managed to get in touch with him. We connected off of Shadow and Essence, and I was like, you know what? Let me just scrape all this content. And I'm glad I did, because I don't even remember how I got back in, but I scraped everything for that book maybe like a month before it all disappeared.
Yeah.
So it was very serendipitous.
Yeah, and I knew that there was a lot of this stuff that I wouldn't want to use in my own games over the years, so that's why I saved pretty much everything that I had up to that point.
Awesome. Talking about some of the culture, I guess we would call it, of Shadow and Essence, what stands out to both of you about the experience of being there, I guess? Apart from the enthusiasm of the fans and everything, what were some of the ways that you could engage with the game that maybe you haven't had before or since?
I'll go.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was just the amazing friendliness of everyone there, and we came from such different backgrounds. One of my favorite people there went by Spiky,
I knew it.
and
I knew you were going to
yeah,
say it.
and unfortunately, he passed away several years ago. But trust me, he and I are so very, very different. Um, I know this is kind of weird for a geek and a gamer, but I'm actually a Christian. He is most certainly not. But we came to an agreement on those things, and we just shared in Changeling and could really find common ground in friendship so that we didn't have to, worry about differences. And we each understood each other and respected each other. And then just so many people. I remember one of the first Dragon Cons in Atlanta, Georgia that I went to, and actually got to meet in person a couple of the people, Sandtrigger being one of them, who was on the forum at the time. And so it was just really, really cool to make those friendships over a game like this.
For me, just having the experience of like running scenes and doing games, because I mean, people would run games on
Hmm.
forum posts, and I had grown used to that on the White Wolf forums and being able to continue that. Because like I had friends I could game with in school and stuff, but people come and go, people go and do their own thing, and just having that sort of slow burn, ongoing chronicle in the background that I knew a couple times a day I could just log in, drop a post, come back later, and that kind of kept the idea of running games and playing characters and exploring corners of the setting alive for me for so long.
For me, it was like until we did our own Discord, it was the most really the place to talk about Changeling. Like lots of enthusiasm, lots of people. Like it was the only place for
Yeah.
ever. Like we had stuff on
Yeah.
White Wolf, like the Onyx Path forum had a little bit, but like wasn't the same. In fact, it's probably more intense than even our Discord at this, like at some points. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and then it wasn't just Changeling, like the whole people everywhere, and it's like I think we got several people into Changeling, they're into other World of Darkness just because they saw how enthusiastic the
Oh yeah,
Changeling
no,
crew
I
were.
I actually remember that because I would go on the vampire and werewolf groups from time to time
Yeah,
because I like both of those games too, and they would come over and just be amazed at how active we were, what
yeah,
things we were coming up with, because a lot of them had the typical bear with balloons image in their head, and we're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, guys, no, you think ennui in vampire is bad? Let me tell you about forgetting everything that you've ever known
yeah,
and loved and everything that you are. And I think we did get some converts, but not to say that the other groups on S&E were bad or
mm,
anything. It's just there was something special about Changeling, and so many things that I learned about the game from people there. Things I hadn't thought of, or maybe a story idea, or more of a cultural background to a given kith or art or something like that that I hadn't experienced. And it was just great to learn and share with each other in such a vibrant way. And from people all over the world. I mean, I'm here in America. Spiky was in England. I know we had people from all over, and it was just the epitome of the good things about the internet and about connecting people wherever they are.
Yeah. So let's talk about. We have a document to peruse, perhaps.
Yep.
This month of the Changeling PDF. So I vaguely remember this. This was like right before I joined, I think, because I remember seeing the aftermath of Month of the Changeling and being like, I missed it. But I think this like really goes to show the community leveraging all of its talents, because you have like game mechanics, you have stories, you have artwork, you have passages of writing, fiction. I mean, the layout by Charlie, which I think Charlie was like the layout person for all
Yeah.
homebrew Changeling projects for
No, he
years.
definitely was. He was the
But
one who took all of the stuff that people wrote and created and put it together with proper formatting,
yeah,
borders, everything, and made it look like an official supplement.
yeah. So how did this come about? I mean, there were months for the other games too, but what was
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
the initiative behind this?
It basically came up with some of the other game lines. We're going to do a month on Shadow and Essence, and we're just going to celebrate this given game. And each group was given 1 month to do what they wanted. And the other groups did some really cool stuff. And it was, what can we come up with? And maybe some contests and things like that. And bragging on our own people, we went above and beyond what anyone had done in the others, to the point of getting other sponsors. Like, so basically, the idea was, and we broke it down into weeks. So, the week of winter, the week of spring, the week of autumn and summer, and so on. And each week we would have different themes where we would actually have contests: an art contest, a riddle contest, making arts, not just art, character creation contest, all these different kinds of things. And then we, as the leaders of the Changeling group, we would read them all, look at them all, and vote on who won for that month. And sometimes you would get a nice little banner that the creator of Shadow and Essence would make with the format of the artwork for it. But we actually got some other things. We actually got Tony Ditterlizzi to sign one of the Changeling books. I think it was the Knocker Kith book. Send it to us
Mm.
for free and actually do a little doodle in it. We were able to get a printed copy to one person of the Kith book Boggin that we used for someone who won one of those contests. So this went beyond just the basic forum, where we were sort of starting to loop in some of the people who actually helped create the original Dreaming game, and it was just amazing. And then what Charlie did with laying it out in the right format was just phenomenal. The first time I saw it, I'm like, I don't know if White Wolf could do things this well. But just, we when we made the book, we included not just the winners, but everybody who entered, they were in there. And so you can just see some amazing things. It's one of the things I'm most fond about, because it was truly a group effort. People collectively came together, and I know there was glamour being produced during that month on S&E.
Yeah, most definitely. And the book is in full color too, which
Yeah.
was such a joy at that point.
Yes. Because by then we were getting stuff that was black and white, and it was really nice to get it all in color. And it's actually kind of funny. The winner of the art, she goes by Miss Gizmo online, and I actually got in touch with her a couple of years ago for an anniversary present for me and my wife, and I commissioned her to do a portrait of her and my signature Changeling characters that I then had printed onto a canvas. It's couple of feet by a couple of feet sitting on her wall right now. But I met her through the Shadow and Essence forum because of the amazing artwork that she did in Month of the Changeling.
Nice. Yeah, that's the kind of thing, like, there was such encouragement. So Josh and I both now hang out with in a group that's Storytellers Vault authors, and there is like mutual support in there. But I remember trying to, because that was really like my first foray into putting my homebrew stuff out there. Like I had always kind of developed ideas for my own games and stuff, but the idea of like making a book or something, and people just, I mean, the ideas and the feedback were just endless. Like
Yeah.
you could say, oh, I want to include a treasure for this, and it's here's 50 ideas.
Yeah. And
And
it was
15 of them
never,
are from Spiky.
yeah,
So
no one ever put anyone down. And I love that because
Yeah.
we all know we've been online for as many decades. We know how discouraging and hateful it can be,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, no one said, "Oh, that's stupid," or "Yeah, don't do that." It was always a positive and uplifting set of feedback and suggestions, and it was a second family to me. And my wife was on there also, and she was participating. She went by Tink,
Oh yeah.
and so yeah, so we were both involved, and we would still talk about it to this day. In fact, she was kind of excited when she found out that I was going to be recording with you guys, because we still remember that group and the people
Oh.
involved.
Well, I mean, do send our regards, please.
Yeah, will do.
So maybe the key question then is, why did it end?
I wish I knew, because I actually, just for life reasons, had to step back,
Mm-hmm.
probably somewhere around 05, 06. So it was before things actually completely fell apart. It's just I was actually the one in charge of the Changeling section, and I loved it. But I was always online and
Mm-hmm.
doing things and helping to moderate and helping to get people's ideas out there, and life just kind of happened, and I had to kind of step down and step back.
Yeah.
And then when I went back a few years later and tried to dig it up, I found out that it really wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And I wasn't there at the end to know the full story behind it, though.
Yeah. I'm not sure 100%. We'd have to, like, Mordecai, Jimmy. Actually, on LinkedIn, follow him, so maybe we could see about that. But I know he had just helping his own career, and the site was developing. Like it'd go down, and then he'd be like, "Oh, I didn't realize," and you break up. I don't think he was like as active on it, and it's like
Yeah,
when you have a hobby that you're paying lots of money for and you're doing lots of work for, and then you lose interest in it, that makes it hard. But also, like, the community was kind of just, we were enthusiastic, but like, like Swordsman, you had stuff going on. Eventually, other people would have stuff
yeah,
going on, right? And then you're not getting all these new Changeling people wanting to join, and it just kind of, it was hard to even buy the books at one, like,
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
even know when you could start getting them on drive through, but you definitely couldn't at that point. So it's like the books are getting more expensive, harder to find. You're
Yeah,
not
trying to
getting,
search them on eBay or used bookstores or
yeah.
something
So
like
you're not
that.
getting new people involved. You're
Yeah.
not, and it's harder to keep it going. And I think it just kind of petered out.
It was also the beginning of social media as we know it, and I have to imagine some number of people
Yeah,
just moved over, like made Facebook groups and hung out there instead.
yeah. Or live journaling at that
Yeah,
point.
oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I started grad school, that was my excuse.
I still miss forum formats, though.
yeah,
There was just something a little bit easier to keep track of multiple threads and multiple topics than in
yeah.
modern social
I think
media.
it was around 2007 when I sort of was doing more RPG net than shadownessence because
Yeah.
there was more people there. But
See, that's one RPG net and I mean Shadow and Essence, I really was able to pay attention to like one site at a time.
yeah,
So I was just on White Wolf forums and then I was just on Shadow and Essence. And RPG net in particular has always struck me as having like, because it is so deep.
yeah.
There's a very high I don't know, a very high curve to being involved in that community, it seems to
There
me.
is
That and the Onyx Path
there
forums.
was a tagging system even pretty early on that you could use to kind of follow, but the
Yeah.
culture there was also not. It was not shadownessence. Let's
Yeah.
put it that
Yeah.
way. Even it's changed since then. I'm still not. I don't think it's for me, but like the it was those times were very more rough and tumble than White Wolf forums. Let's put it
Mm.
that way. So, but yeah, like yeah, the social media sites were picking up too, and that was just
Yeah.
yeah. So this obscure old game no one cared about, and then when so it wasn't until like the announcement of the, well, it's literally when the V20 took off with the Kickstarter, and then that's when I think the remaining Changeling fans were still in contact through Tumblr, LiveJournal, or Facebook or whatever. We're like, wait a second, and then they announced like Werewolf, and we're like, wait a second,
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when those 20ths were
yeah.
coming out, and I was like, "Oh, you're going through the lines. Please get to Changeling." And I literally backed it the first day that it was on Kickstarter, just because I was like, "Thank you."
I put in more money into that Changeling 20 Kickstarter than I really should have at that stage of my life, but I need it to like come back. And it worked.
Seriously,
It
I
actually
kind of
worked.
did the same thing.
It's here.
Yeah.
It's still around. It's bigger now than at least since
Well,
Time of Judgment.
bigger than it's been in many years before,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that we've got Storyteller's Vault now
Yep.
where people can be allowed to create their own supplements and publish them. So it's a way to kind of keep that alive, but also to go into different areas that the actual Onyx Path, White Wolf, any of the others, that they didn't go themselves.
Hmm.
And it's in a way harkening back to some of that creativity of Shadow and Essence, because now we have a place that people can share these things. I mean, I check it frequently, and every time there's a new Changeling supplement, boom, getting it.
Yep.
Yeah. I mentioned to Josh that I ran Changeling the 20th Anniversary Edition at a convention this past weekend, and it went, I think, very well. Everyone was excited for it. But I mentioned the Storyteller's Vault, and everyone's like, what's that? So it was this opportunity. I think it's just difficult now to kind of get everybody in sync because there are a lot of fans still out there. It's just everyone is distributed around all of these different sites and
But I
platforms.
feel like there's more of them now. Like even if they're distributed everywhere.
Yeah.
Like if you get just a slice of the pie, it just feels like it's still you're getting a bigger slice. Even if it's
Well, because we Grumps never gave it up. And
Yeah, seriously.
So I have a final question. Josh, I don't know if you have any other final questions. No. So for Chris, now that Shadow and Essence has had its day and moved on, what do you find yourself doing in order to scratch that itch or be engaged with the game and the community in whatever way? Is there any kind of suggestions that you would give to people to try and recapture a bit of that magic, whether they experienced it as a member of Shadow Essence or not?
Yeah, I don't know that it's possible to get quite back to that just because of how it was all grouped together in one place. But I'm on a Changeling Facebook group. Wish it was more active, but we share stuff. My biggest thing though is I've never stopped playing the game. I still create stuff. I am running a chronicle right now, and it's interesting. I don't like modern settings for Changeling. I've only done that I think like once. So we're actually doing a Regency English setting right now, and doing it in the interregnum and bringing a lot of those things in. So for me, scratching that creative itch, I can do that at home. As a storyteller, one of my greatest joys is going into detail of creating settings and NPCs. My wife constantly talks about how she can't believe how much time I put into those things. And, that's just my creative outlet. And that's kind of how I do it. But then getting to connect with people like you guys, once I found your podcast, being able to listen to it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting so much glamour from this. And, finding little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. From your lips to everyone's ears.
Yay, thank you. Yeah, I know where I go for that. You can go to our Discord.
What? Well, where?
CTP. Yeah, discord.me/CTP. You can listen to our podcast, changelingthepodcast.com. There's our Facebook page for Changeling the Podcast. Sometimes it posts on one of those Facebook groups. You can also email us, podcast@changelingthepodcast.com. You can leave comments on our YouTube channel for Changeling the Podcast. You can go check out our Patreon for Changeling the Podcast, and you can send us a toot on Mastodon, changelingpod@dice.camp.
Links to all of which will be in the show notes to this minisode.
Yeah, so thanks for being on this, Chris.
Great talking to you guys. Had a lot of fun.
Thank you for blasting our past.
Yeah.
You're welcome, guys.
Okay. So I guess signing off.
Although C20 established once and for all that grumpdom is not necessarily tied to a certain age bracket, the practice of wistful reminiscence and fond memories of times past seems rather characteristic of that state of being, and the advantage of being older is having more of those memories to draw upon. So we pour one out for Spiky and all the other absent friends to whom we wish good fortune on their journey, be it around the wheel or otherwise. Future episodes may lean into other aspects of grumpdom, like complaining about how people just don't distribute attribute dots like they used to, or how much of a wound penalty you should take for sudden ridiculous back pain that you got from standing up. But in the meantime, we'll focus instead on the community aspects that we discussed in this minisode, and encourage listeners to come by our Discord at www.discord.me/ctp if you are in need of some fae-flavored conversation. We also welcome your support through our Patreon, whose members get a shout-out of thanks and appreciation like so. Anarchist, Derek, Dorcadus, Elleris, Eobol, Jason Vines, Oreo, Raz Caboose, Sandjigger, Sija, Terry Robinson, Tricerabeth, and Victor Torre. If you'd like to join their ranks, visit www.patreon.com/changelingthepodcast for more. As we prepare for semi-hibernation in the winter months, we hope you'll help us keep the balefires lit and contribute to the vibrant community that, as we think this conversation showed, has meant so much to so many over the years. Here's to you and your chimerical partners in crimes, and until next time, keep on dreaming.